Denzi Cadenzi, hello. Anyone else who's out there? Hello. How's it going? Welcome. It's nice to see you. I'm Abbers. I play video games sometimes. I also interview other streamers about streaming sometimes on a little podcast. That's the word. Called Why We Go Live. And so that's what we're doing today. And I have the privilege and honor of talking with a good Twitch friend of mine, and I'm going to go ahead and play you a clip so you can get to know them. Maybe, theoretically.
Like, I can relate to an earwig. I feel like on some level, we get each other. Like, you're a little scared of me, I'm a little scared of you. We're both anxious, tired, clumsy, awkward. We both have weird butts. Like, it's fine. So I get earwigs. But then, like, a house centipede just zooms across the floor. And, like, it's late for a meeting yesterday, and it's like, no, I don't have anything in common with you. I've never had that much energy in my entire life. Like, I
So
can
good.
relate.
I have so many earwig questions for you. Sable, welcome. How's it going?
Oh, it is going how it always goes.
Oh, yeah?
Forward,
Going forward.
mostly.
I don't know if I said your name. Guys, this is Sable. And Sable apparently has a lot of earwig knowledge. My first question, what's up with earwig butts? Because you said that
Okay.
you both have weird butts, and I want to know.
I think I have more knowledge about my butt than I do earwig butts, but
Fair. Honestly, same.
the only thing I really can tell you about earwig butts is that a lot of people think like, oh, they must like pinch and stuff with those, but no, not really. They're harmless.
They
They
must
look
pinch with
scary.
their butts?
Well, because they have like those like claw pincer looking butts,
Okay.
but
Okay.
you know, they're just harmless, bumbly little things that look really confused wherever they are.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good clip. Well, let's begin at the most logical place to begin, the beginning. Sable, when was your first stream?
I think like everybody, I started streaming during the pandemic. I think it was August 2020. I think we probably started around the same time,
Sounds
or
like it,
close to
yeah.
it.
Because I started in October 2020.
Yeah, I think it was sometime around there.
Okay,
I don't actually remember.
fair.
Um, but yeah, I just thought like, well, I'm on Twitch a lot. Uh, can't go anywhere. I guess I'll stream.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what you did for your first stream?
Um, well, the very first stream, I was just using like Twitch's OBS, which is not
It's
fantastic.
rough. Does it still exist? Do people still use it?
I mean, it barely existed when I tried to use it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I think my first stream like was just like a blank screen and no audio because I couldn't get it to do it. But I probably just streamed like Hearthstone because there was the most I was familiar with the game, but also just because like a lot of people I watched had streamed it and I could copy a lot of what they did and
Hmm.
then event branched out from there.
Huh. So you were a fan of Twitch and watched a lot of Twitch streamers prior to streaming. Was that part of the inspiration to then start streaming? Like, what was it? Obviously, quarantine and not being able to go anywhere, but going from being a viewer to being a streamer, how did you kind of make that transition?
Um, I don't. I guess it didn't feel like much of a transition for me because a lot of the channels that I would hang out in were, I mean, I know that there's like that parasocial element, but there was like this friendlier element, like smaller communities, people tended to know each other. So when I started streaming, it wasn't like switching from being like a small voice in a giant community to now being like the big voice in my community. It was just like, now I'm just talking more and have to provide the content. It's still like, a group of friends hanging out, and I've tried to keep that vibe going.
Yeah, definitely. Have you always used the screen name Sable?
Yeah, well, usually I use the screen name Sable, but Twitch, someone took that, so I became Sable, and it actually, I don't know, it feels normal to like hear people be like Sable, Sable. So yeah, um, but no, normally, prior to Twitch, I would try to just get the screen name Sable,
Where does that come
because,
from?
um, well, it's the name I use, that I kind of took as a new name. I don't consider my government name to be a dead name, but it's not like me.
Yeah.
Um, but it comes from Pokemon actually,
I
because
was gonna
I
say the double of it. Sorry, let me just totally interrupt you. But like when you say Sable Sable, there's something about it that sounds like a Pokemon, like saying their name. Continue.
that
Sorry.
um, but like so I didn't know that I was choosing my new name at first.
Yeah.
I just started using the name Sable in Pokemon when I was like in high school, and then it started spreading from like Pokemon to other areas and choosing it as my name on places. And then once I used it on, like I created the username Sable Sable, like kind of like that Pokemon like saying their name thing on
Yeah.
Twitch. Um, but then once I started streaming and like people were calling me Sable Sable, but even just like referring to myself as Sable, because I don't actually like say Sable Sable in my head.
Sure. Yeah.
Then it really started to sink in like, oh, this is just my name now. Like this is what everyone knows me as. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Was there significance to the word Sable when you very first chose it?
I have I probably just thought it sounded nice,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean I would have been like probably 14 or 15, so I didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have no idea how I don't even know if I knew that it was like a real name. I just was like, ah, Sable.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's cool to kind of like choose a name like that and for it to like become become who you are in some ways. There's something really beautiful about that because I think that like for some screen names it almost like feels like you have to like fit into that box. Like if that makes sense, like you have to like fit your screen name whereas this just kind of like is you, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting to me at least that it like it's my screen name, but it's also my name, and it just but I didn't like sit down and decide like, all right, I have all these names picked out that I could choose from. It just over like almost 2 decades, it became my name.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it odd having people online refer to you by your name?
My name's Sable, or
Yeah.
like, oh no, that just feels normal now. It's
Yeah.
felt normal for a long time.
I'm always curious about that because it's like, so for me, my name is Abby and it's on my bio. It's not like I keep it a secret, right? But the screen name Abbers, like, there is some sort of like separation, I guess, between the name Abbers versus me, Abby, I guess, if that makes sense. And it's
Yeah.
funny because like when I first started using Abbers as my like Twitch name, that was always just like a nickname growing up that like my brothers and my dad called me. And so then it like flipped to this place of like, oh, it's weird that like this is now designated for online and not necessarily like in real life. Like it kind of like flipped, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think s- what might have been kind of similar for me was just there's I think a certain like familiarity that I accidentally like did by doubling the name. I don't know. It kind of gives
Yeah,
it like a the way that you might have like a nickname for a kid or something. So it kind of sounds like a nickname, but it's still just like my name just being doubled. So it's but it was weird like there I think for me there was a similar feeling of like, oh, this is real now.
yeah,
Like the Sable is now out in the wild is like a name that people are using for me. It's not
right.
just like a real life thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's just yeah. I like that. Like it's out in the wild now. That's how it felt for me too. So you're affiliate now. So you went from being someone who enjoyed being in kind of small communities and then kind of fostering your own small community and then getting affiliate. What was that process like?
Um, I I hit affiliate after a few months actually, because when I first started streaming, I kind of thought like, okay, I'm gonna hit affiliate. I'm gonna grow the stream, blah blah blah, do all these things because these are what these are the things you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't know what it was like to actually stream. But around the time that I hit affiliate, I started to realize just like how parasocial it can be a streamer and how it
Mm,
starts to affect you in ways that you don't expect interpersonally. And I kind of yeah, it was around the time that I hit affiliate where I was like, I don't really want to be like a big streamer. I don't
mm,
want this to be like some. I don't want like how I relate to people to fundamentally change. I want to be able to maintain, to the extent that it's possible on Twitch, like genuine relationships with like the people who come and go. So I gave up my dreams of like, gonna make it big and be a star.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and you bring up a few really interesting points. Like, for bigger streamers, do you think it's possible to maintain that kind of like authentic relationship with people in their chat and in their communities?
I think it's probably possible to maintain like an authenticity, but without specificity. Like you can be generally authentic, but it's kind of like the same authenticity for everyone. You can't tailor it to an individual.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that like the ways in which you have to commodify yourself as a big streamer, and like I think that also just complicates your ability to really relate to people individually. And uh, I don't. This isn't really a tangent; it's related. But I remember years ago I was listening to one large streamer around the time that I hit affiliate, and someone was asking why she wasn't listening to music, and she just said like, oh, like I never listen to music because when I'm streaming I can't because of copyright stuff, so I just don't listen to music anymore. And that was something else where I just thought like, oh geez, like I don't listen to music when I'm streaming really. Like if I tried to turn this into a full-time thing, like there are all these ways that it just changes your life.
Mm.
But yeah, like the big, I guess to get back to the original question, the big streamers that I like, I think are the ones who are able to maintain that like general authenticity without specificity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that like this idea of commodification, like I think Twitch streaming, it there is a level of needing like commodify your personality because that's kind of what you're selling for the most part. And then also like the commodity of attention, as far as like attention being the currency in Twitch so often. So it's interesting because it's like, I don't know, if you go back to your music example, like there may be people who are like, oh well, it's hard to hang out here because there's not music and I like to have music in the background, or vice versa, where it's like people like to hang out with streamers because they don't have music, whatever. And so like when you get into this kind of place of like changing the way you go about creating your content in order to like satisfy that need or that desire on another end, it changes everything about streaming, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting how you have to become like, I don't, mindful feels like the wrong word, because but you have to become like more mindful of what people want and need, to try to sell yourself better. You want
Yeah.
to, if no one's buying, then that makes it harder to, feed the cats.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, while you have to like pay more attention and have a better understanding of what people want, it's like you have to do it from a increasing distance between you and those people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's really strange.
You've brought up the idea of like parasocial relationships and just like parasocial kind of like environments. Like what I'm curious what your experience has been, not only as a streamer but also as a viewer and as someone who mods, because you mod for quite a few channels, including this one. So
Yeah.
what is your kind of yeah, I guess take on parasocial interactions, and what have you observed that way?
Um, oh gosh. I mean, I think I've thought about it a lot. So,
Yeah.
um, I feel like it's just kind of unavoidable.
Mm,
I mean, I think there's like, the internet is everything now, and it's just so much of how we relate to each other. But I think that fundamentally there's this parasocial element to the internet that you can't really get around.
mm-hmm.
And even as someone, like you said, like I mod for people, I stream, I watch, I do all of those things. But I'll still catch myself sometimes like feeling that there's a familiarity between me and like a streamer or something that I know isn't there.
Yeah.
And it just, I think you just have to be more mindful of like how you're perceiving those relationships, because they, yeah, they are not always. I mean, you can have genuine relationships with like people online, but you just have to be very careful, because it's very easy to slip into like being in a parasocial relationship without realizing it. As long as you realize it, I think it's okay because you can just, keep it in check.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate something you said there. I think we all experience it, no matter what kind of side you're on, whether you're a viewer or a streamer or whatever. And like, I think too, we often think of like parasocial relationships for the streamer as being kind of a one way relationship, being like the chatter, hanging out, and therefore like having more of a perceived relationship with the streamer than the streamer has with that chatter. But I think it goes both ways. I think like at least from my experience there are people that have come and gone from chat that like that I feel I've developed some sort of like friendship with that like I really don't actually know. And so it's interesting this kind of idea of like what does parasocial mean? When does it become a negative thing? Is it always a negative thing? And I think you nailed it where it's like not necessarily. I think we just have to acknowledge that it is a thing that exists in this realm, you know?
Yeah.
But then also like how do you know when it's a parasocial relationship versus a genuine friendship and relationship that you've developed online, you know?
That is a really good question. I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, how do you ever, because that gets down to like a more fundamental question of like, how do you ever know when a friendship is genuine? Like, even
That's
if
a
it's
great point.
a real friendship. And I also think you're right. Like, it definitely goes both ways. Like, as a streamer, there are chatters I remember who don't come around anymore. And part of me is like, I hope they're doing okay wherever they are out in the world. But also,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I thought we were friends and they don't hang out
Yeah.
anymore. But like,
Totally.
and that doesn't mean we weren't friends. Like, we were people who liked spending time together. But I mean, it's kind of a ephemeral medium. People come and go.
Yeah. That's true.
What?
I think that's hard in life in general to like accept that just like existence is ephemeral, but specifically in the online space, like especially with like this kind of pressure to grow and grow and grow, and knowing that like yeah, people are going to be in and out, and that's how life goes, and that's okay, and it's not necessarily a reflection of you as the content creator, you know?
Yeah. And to add to that, because I agree with everything you just said, as I'm required to do because I'm a mod.
You're not required to. No, you're not. Please don't.
But not to be like, oh, we're so old, you and I.
We are
But
though.
like, growing up, like when you're learning what those like relationships are like and friendships are like, usually it's in your immediate environment, like neighborhoods or like family, people who live close by. There's like some physical anchor to those like relationships. Like if you have a friend who like lives a few houses down, even if they're not there, like they're anchored to a place in space time where like you know where they are and you can find each other. But online, we've had to adapt to this different way of relating to people where there is no anchor. Like there might be a username you can check Discord, see if you've got a message, but like the person can just disappear. And it's different from when we were learning what friendships were like. We're like, it's not like the house is just going to disappear. Like, even if you don't see the friend for a while, usually they're still going to be where
Yeah.
they live. But now people just kind of live in this nebulous space where they appear in our computers and then disappear from our computers.
Yeah. This idea of like having a physical anchor is really a great way to put it that I never really thought about, or maybe I just never thought about it in that way because it's like we have, I don't know, especially since quarantine and stuff, like I've really discovered that like I don't really love loud spaces and going out like I didn't realize how much masking I was doing in terms of like sensory overload until I was given permission, and not only permission, but I was mandated to not go out into the world, right? So like when we look at like social relationships and this idea of like having a physical anchor, like that is gone for so many of us. Like for me, like that physical anchor really is my job because I don't work from home. I work at, at a school. And so like that's not really, work is not necessarily a place where we find social relationships sometimes, but it's not the same as what we're talking about here. So like, yeah, it's interesting. And I think it's interesting too, being older, old in terms of like we're both millennials, right? Which is not necessarily old, but in this like Twitch sphere, I think it is. Having existed prior to the advent of the internet and post advent of the internet, right? Like there's something too about the way that like the internet has just changed social relationships so much and taken away that kind of physical anchor that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I feel like because there was this transition for us, like, and it was a transition based on like those physical anchors. Like I remember, getting AOL Instant Messenger for the first time and like
Yes.
filling up my friends list and like people coming offline and all. But like I knew those people, so like they could be offline, but we could call them, could go to their house,
Yeah.
etc. And so like I have no idea what it's like for someone who's like a teenager now. Like they they grew up after that transition happened. So for them, there's like just
Yeah.
the internet, and I can try to understand it, but it's weird being the age that we are, I think, and I think that kind of complicates those. Like maybe the youth handle parasocial relationships much better than we do because
Maybe.
that's just how it's always been.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. When this kind of word parasocial started getting thrown around, I think it was, for me anyway, it was with YouTubers specifically. Um, but you also have kind of parasociality with like with the celebrity, regardless of what that is. I think that YouTube, when it first came to be, was kind of this great equalizer of like, oh, anyone can make content and anyone can blow up at any moment, right? So like to me, YouTube was kind of the first place where that became real. Um, but when we talk about parasocial in terms of like kind of Twitch relationships that we're talking about, like, yes, for sure, this happens with bigger streamers, but this also happens with small streamers, right? So it's interesting because it's like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's a point where like when you say like the youth, the young people, I'm curious if they have a better understanding of boundaries or if it's more boundaryless, or like what that means in terms of just like your engagement with others through this medium. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It kind of reminds me of the book Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke.
Oh, I don't know that one.
'Cause yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but like a big element of the book is that there's like this generational shift in how people relate to other people and information's processed and all of that. And the people who exist before it just can't understand what it's like to exist after that shift. It's just fundamentally different.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Have you seen the movie Eighth Grade?
Mm-mm.
I was literally just talking to a friend about this, which may be why we're talking about this because it's fresh on my mind. Bo Burnham wrote it and directed it, and it follows a girl who is in eighth grade. And it came out in like 2018, I think. So like 5 years ago now, but still fairly relevant in terms of like you're watching this teenage kid who is what we're talking about, where it's like the internet has always been, and that is how you engage with people, right? And it's fascinating in terms of like I think there's something about like coming of age stories and like puberty stories that are always going to be relevant no matter what time, because we've all gone through that and understand that kind of feeling. But at the same time, when you watch that kind of a story through the lens of someone whose life is online, like it's just fascinating. It's a very good watch. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'll add that to the
I was gonna say
old list of
I'm
movies.
gonna add what is it? Childhood's End? Is that it?
Yeah, Childhood's End is
Okay.
there was a series, like a sci-fi series made from it that wasn't very good, but like I really like the book.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I was thinking about something similar to what you said the other day about how just like the medium of like television and everything's kind of changed just in like what it has to portray, because like
Yeah.
if you're telling a coming of age story now, you have to find a way to like show text messages and stuff on the screen. And if you were doing that 20 years ago, you like there's this textual element now to or not textual, but like yeah, there's just like all these um new modes of communication that you have to somehow incorporate on the screen. Like it's just it's interesting to see how that, but it's also like you said, it's the same story. Everyone's gone through puberty.
Yeah.
Some have gone through it twice.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it kind of goes back to this idea too of like every generation becomes afraid of the new technology of the generation that's next, kind of a thing, right? Like it's like, oh, cell phones are ruining people's lives. The internet is ruining people's lives, right? Newspapers are ruining people's lives. Electricity is ruining people's lives. So it's funny because it's like technology is going to progress regardless, right? That's I mean it's kind of seems like it's infinite at this point, and it's going to progress very quickly. So like we, there's this fear of it changing who we are because it does, right? And not necessarily for better or worse, but it does. It just changes things.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I don't think that I'm not afraid of technology necessarily changing. Like I don't think there's something necessarily bad about that. You know, I'm not a fan of AI and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and I do have like a 40-year-old radio alarm clock on my nightstand. So I do, there's some old technology I
I
like.
love that. Yeah. Well, I don't even think it's necessarily like a fear, so much as like, I mean, for some people certainly, but maybe just like a resistance to certain forms of technology. And I'm not even saying this for you. I think that just like I don't know. I keep thinking of TikTok, and how that seems to be the great generational divide in terms of social media. And I think it was Snapchat prior to that, but now it seems to be TikTok, where there's this kind of like thing of like people are either like super into it or they are not. And it seems like there is a kind of like age factor to that, where it is the young man's social media, as it were, and like you're there, even if you are older and you're into it, you're not gonna get the jokes, and you're not gonna be part of the cultural zeitgeist the way that like younger kids are, you know?
Yeah. Um, and I think a part of that is like the changes in technology. Because it feels strange to even call it like an advancement. Like, is TikTok an advancement of anything, or is it just like a change of things that already existed? I don't know, but it feels like more of an abstract thing. Like,
Yeah.
a new technology. Like, hey, I have sharpened this stick, and now you can poke things with it. Thousands of years ago, like, it's easier to communicate like that new technology to someone. But like, how do you explain TikTok? You have to explain like 100 other things to
Yeah.
explain what TikTok is.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. That's like that. Like, I feel like this is a, I don't know, thought experiment people always bring up. That's like, oh man, aliens when they crash land on the Earth, years from now, like what will they think of cell phones, and what will they think of all of these different like things that we've left behind, kind of a thing, which is like, I don't know, probably the same shit they would have thought of like centuries ago. It's just humans humaning.
Yeah, they uh, they would probably think I mean, if they crash land it, they probably just think like, shit, how do we fix our ship and get off here? Like,
Probably has very little to do with us.
this planet has no ozone. It has no ice caps. We got to get out of this planet.
I may have misspoken with the crash land, but yes. Or like, or you go the opposite direction where it's like, if you handed your great 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 grandmother a cell phone, like what would she think, you know? And it's like, they're kind of silly thought experiments, just because I think technology is so culturally specific and culturally relevant or irrelevant. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't even know. I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah, okay. So going back to the streaming part of it, I love tangents.
me
When you
too.
look at like your stream when you very first started versus your streaming now, like what are some of the biggest things that have changed for you?
Mm, well, one thing that's probably obvious to anyone watching is I don't really use a cam ever. I did when I first started. I don't remember when I stopped. It was just something where I like would stop turning it on for streams, and I was just much more comfortable not having it on, and then
Yeah.
eventually just never had it on. Sometimes I'll do it occasionally. I did a stream with a cam last week because I thought like, oh, I'm gonna prepare for this podcast and have my cam on for this podcast, and then I streamed with it on. I was like, I just don't feel as comfortable. I don't. It would probably not be as good if
Fuck it.
yeah.
I mean, I've kind of been the opposite in terms of like I started out streaming very adamant that I would not use a camera, and I've kind of grown to love it, but also feel very comfortable being like, nope, not feeling it today. I'm not going to use it. So I will always have love for the no cam streamers because I very much identify with it and I get it, you know.
Yeah, and I don't want to like accidentally say something nice about myself, but I think if you stream without a cam, it is harder in some ways because you do kind of depend on those parasocial relationships to get people in the first place.
Yeah,
And if there's no cam, it's just like you got your voice and you got whatever you're doing, whatever game you're playing or whatever, and that's it. Like they can't fall in love with your face. Like you just gotta um I guess that's another thing that's changed is like I'm more uh intentional with how I speak and stuff like because yeah, I do just have my voice and that's it most of the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that yeah, there is something to it where it's like there's something a little bit more like gratifying in a way, I guess, like looking at like having been able to uh like create an environment where people want to hang out purely with your voice and not using a camera. Like you said, there's something about that that like to me feels very satisfying on some level. It's like there's something that feels very authentic about that versus like if it's based on I don't know, and this probably isn't actually true, but it's how it feels. If you have your face out for people to see, then they have that to grab onto whether or not you're speaking, right? So it is different. It does feel different using a camera and not using a camera. And like I think that like there is this kind of idea that is thrown around about like, oh well, if you don't use a camera, people aren't gonna stop by your stream. Like what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I think I think it's kind of true. I I'm also guilty of that, but I think it's true because if you're not using a camera, I think there's a maybe reasonable assumption that people make that like might be newer to streaming or you haven't set everything up and it just like the quality might not be great. Like if I tune into someone who's not using a camera, honestly, like half the time I expect to hear like a pretty shitty microphone, um, which is kind of a shitty thing to think, but it also sometimes it's true. Like some people just want to play a game and don't really care about like, um, but I think if someone just gives me a chance, you know, like if you, once someone actually tunes in, like I think I don't know, I haven't looked at like the analytics, like viewers, like is I don't even know if there's a way like how many like what's my ratio of like people who watch to like followers I get. I don't know. But like
Yeah.
I know recently I've been getting a lot of followers and I haven't changed anything. It's just my voice. So
Yeah. Well, you do. I said it before. You have a very soothing voice. You do, and like, yeah, I know that you often stream when you have insomnia. So there's something about your voice that is like very calming and nice for like 3 a.m. streams to me.
well, thank you.
Yeah,
Y-
definitely. What speaking of that, what kind of people tend to find your streams?
Um, well, the best people, cool people. I mean, if you find my stream, then you're pretty awesome.
Hmm.
But I don't I don't know that there's like one kind of person who finds my stream. Usually, if I'm doing like the insomnia streams, it's usually just like people who just want a low, I don't want to say low energy, but you know, low energy. I don't want to say it, but I'll say it anyway. But that kind of makes it seem like low effort, and like I'm still putting effort into it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think low energy has to be low effort. I see what you mean though.
And like I don't I don't know how. Like I don't think I've ever used like tags to search for streams, but I guess some people do.
Mm.
So like I I have a lot of viewers who have like chronic illness. I have a lot of viewers who are queer. But I think that like even before I started intentionally like using tags like that, I was getting viewers like that.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's just like because of who I am, that's who I would end up attracting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and like just to speak on that, like being someone who is chronically ill and is queer, like how do those kind of aspects of your identity inform your streams?
Um, I do. So the queerness doesn't. It's not that I don't try to make it a part of my stream. It's just, you know, it doesn't feel like a very large part of the stream, but at the same time, like for most of my life, I didn't think I was queer, and then once I realized I was queer, everyone was like, "Yeah, you're one of the queerest people I know. You always have been." It's like maybe it
Same.
is like maybe it is a big part of the stream.
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure there's like a fundamental queerness. The chronically ill part, uh, I think that's an element of the stream. One in like when I stream, the frequency of it, like all that stuff. Part of like the reason I don't use a camera is because I usually feel like I look like crap because I feel like crap. But
Mm.
with like the voice and how I try to make just the atmosphere of the stream like a soothing place to be, I think that just comes from being a chronically ill person and needing to develop all these self-soothing techniques and like being able to create this like calmness for myself and then wondering like am I okay can I extend this so that I can create like a calm environment so that other people can be soothed by me in the way that I soothe myself. I think that's because I don't even talk about chronic illness that much, but I think that's how chronic illness is most apparent in my stream is just how I try to, if anyone, like help anyone else who's experiencing chronic illness just by creating a soothing environment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and I find that this is a very common thing that is not even necessarily a conscious decision. Maybe it becomes one over time, kind of like what you were saying, but like you create the space that you need first and foremost, and then that attracts people that also need that kind of space, right? So it's kind of it's cool to like know that like you need a place that is soothing for you, and therefore it might be soothing to others.
Yeah. Uh, which wasn't how it was in the beginning. Like I wasn't, it's not that I was like, you know, really trying to create something that had nothing that I needed. But like when I first started streaming, you know, was trying to just, it's sort of like a pantomime of being a streamer.
Mm.
And being chronically ill, just not having the energy to maintain elements of it, like having the cam always on, things like that. So
Yeah.
I did eventually end up with the space that I needed, but it wasn't intentional. It was more of elements being subtracted from it that weren't necessary because I couldn't maintain them. And then once that was done, then it became more an intentional part. Like, okay, I'm just left with my voice. How can I use my voice? I'm just left with like what I talk about. What do I want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I like this idea of like subtracting, and I like what you said about a pantomime of a streamer. I'm curious, like, can you describe that? Like, what is a pantomime of a streamer to you?
Um, it. I think it was like there were these ways that I had seen streamers interact with me in chat. Like I would watch these streamers and I don't. It wasn't like any particular qualities necessarily that I was imitating, but it was just to be really vague about it in a way that's great for a podcast. Like there would be like an energy that I would try to emulate, and like I think I was trying to emulate like the parasociality of it in a way, like
Mm.
and also like there was like the weird elements of like trying to encourage subs without encouraging subs, like without begging for money. Hey, do you want to give me money? And
Mm-hmm.
um, but that was stuff because like this isn't this was never my job. This is always just something that I wanted to do, and it was um, like that might work for some people, but it's weird that like that's my idea of what streaming needs to be because I don't. It doesn't need to be that, and
Yeah.
I decided that it wasn't going to be that for me, and I think I would have stopped streaming a long time ago if I uh, had continued trying to like be a streamer, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Where did that initial desire come from to like to be a streamer, as it were?
I think it was just a desire for human connection, which
Mm.
after all this talk of like, parasocial relationships, but like parasocial relationships are still relationships, which I think
Yeah.
is like, it goes back to what you were saying about how like there's still real things that people, like real ways of relating, and as long as you're aware of what they are, I don't think that they're necessarily harmful.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, so I think it was just in the pandemic really being disconnected and isolated and kind of desperate for any sort of human connection at that point,
Mm.
deciding like, okay, this like it's going to be parasocial. I'm not really going to know the people that I'm connecting with, but like within this space, at least within the space of the stream, it can be genuine in the stream. Like we're not lying to each other when we talk about things that we're interested in, things we're afraid of, things we're excited about. Like these are real conversations that are happening. We are learning bits about ourselves. There's a limit to what we can share. There's a limit to how close we can be. But it's still a real connection. And yeah, I really, I guess what I'm trying to say is I was getting really lonely and weird during the pandemic, and I had to do something.
Yeah. I think a lot of us were. I don't think you're alone in that by any means. I think I was right there with you. And I think that like, well, I'm curious. So this idea of like coming from a place of wanting like human connection, wanting more of that, while also this kind of idea of like chasing this kind of like white whale of like being a streamer and like making it, and kind of like those two things are almost at odds with each other in some way, kind of going back to what you said before about like smaller communities and having kind of like authentic and not necessarily specific relationships and all of that. So like it sounds like for you, and I think for many people, there's like a learning curve in like what do these relationships look like, and how does what I value within streaming change that, you know?
Um, yeah, I think for me the real learning curve, and this is something I've like tried to share with other people because I think it's like one of the few things I learned that was actually valuable from streaming is just
Mm.
like the like you can be aware that it's like that these are parasocial relationships that you have, and that's fine, and they're not necessarily harmful, but you as an individual will never be able to keep up with the needs of the community as the community grows. It will always grow faster than you, even if it's just like one person occasionally, like you, because you will always be one person.
Mm,
You can't become more than one person, so you will never be able to give enough of yourself to like like infinitely grow with the community. Like you can grow as a person, but you're still a person, and as the community becomes larger and larger, like it just outpaces you. It always will, and it seems like an obvious thing, but it took me a few months of streaming to understand that. Like, oh, I'm I'm not gonna, like, even if these connections remain genuine, parasocial but genuine, like they're gonna kind of become diluted,
mm,
and I'm gonna be able to give less of myself to each connection because there's gonna be more people. I'm gonna have to divide myself into smaller and smaller pieces until like it really doesn't feel like I'm connecting with people at all,
totally.
and I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember I took this was either like a evolutionary anatomy class or it might have been a primate anthropology class. It was something in my anthropology major. Um, but we were learning about neurology and specifically mammalia neurology, and humans, typically speaking, are only able to keep track of 250 relationships ish at any given time. So anytime you tip the scale beyond 250 people, you're going to lose someone. That's just how our brains work, right? So, like, when you think about how many followers various people have, and like people that have that many people in their chat at any given time or more, like it's like you said, it's really it does go beyond you. And again, like even in a smaller community, like if you've hit that affiliate level, that means that you've got at least 50 people that at some point decided to click the follow you button. 50 people is a lot of people. I don't know that I could name 50 people that I know in real life. Like maybe I could, but it would be work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, I mean, my initial reaction to what you said was like, who has 250 relationships?
So
Like,
yeah. Well,
I've never
and
had to worry about, but it also makes sense. Like,
yeah.
in
And I was going to say, like, when I say relationship, it's like someone you have interacted with and you know their name, right? Like, it's not necessarily like this, like, ongoing relationship. It doesn't necessarily, like, you know, define, like, the importance of that relationship, but just, like, in general, how many people can you keep track of at any given time that you know? You know what I mean?
yeah, um, yeah. I mean that there's definitely a limit to it, and it's interesting knowing what I know now. Not that I like, totally understand streaming. I'm not like through the looking glass or anything, but like being in a larger stream now and like saying hi and talking with the streamer, it doesn't feel the same as it did like 6 years ago.
Mm,
Um, because I kind of know what it's like. I can imagine what it's like to be a larger streamer now. In the past, when I imagined what it was like, I was totally wrong because I just didn't know anything about it.
yeah.
Now, when I imagine what it's like, I'm just kind of extrapolating what it's like for me to stream, and it's like, they're saying hi to me, but like I'm just a username in chat. Like there's 500 people here. They cannot like relate to all of us. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and so you being someone who was a fan of Twitch and like utilized Twitch, how long were you using Twitch before you became a streamer?
Um, I think I don't know exactly when I started watching Twitch, because I started watching it before I had like an account. I think like 2015, 2016, sometime around there is when I like made an account and started following people. Um, I might have even subscribed to someone in
I
2016,
was gonna say, so
but
you were there kind of at the advent of it, because when did Twitch stop being Justin TV and start being Twitch?
I don't remember. I think I vaguely remember Justin TV, but I think that was when I didn't have an account. I
Yeah,
didn't go there that often. I usually like someone would have to share like like, oh hey, watch this thing that's happening on Justin TV, and I'm like, what the
Yeah.
heck is Justin TV? Who's
Yeah.
Justin?
That's funny.
Um,
Looks like 2014 is when it switched. So yeah, you were right there at the advent of it in terms of being a fan or being someone that used it.
yeah, um, yeah, and that's I know Twitch has changed a lot over the years, but in a lot of the ways, it's at least in my use of it, it's kind of stayed the same.
Yeah. Yeah. What you mentioned kind of this idea of like what you thought it meant to be a big streamer versus what you have observed it to be now. Like what are some of the misconceptions you think about like being a big streamer?
Um, well, the biggest thing that I didn't understand was just the amount of work that goes into streaming,
Mm.
even as a small streamer, even if you're streaming to no one, like no one's watching, but you're still like, it's just, it requires physical energy, emotional energy. Like it's just a lot of labor that
Yeah.
you don't get paid enough for by Twitch. And I just didn't understand that. And then once I understood that, I still was like, okay, but once you're like a bigger streamer, I'm sure that there's like it's like exercising muscles or something. Like you get better at that, and so
Mm.
like I didn't understand that there's just that limit of how you can be in relation to people and connect with people, and that there's really nothing you can do about that. You can't like try hard enough or be good enough to like have 1,000 people in your chat and be like, oh, boom, 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 boom. I know all of you. I'm connecting with all of you. Like it's just it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the labor that goes into it was something I did not appreciate until I started streaming, and I don't think it's something you can appreciate until you start streaming.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Because when you actually make that decision to like download OBS or whatever, all of a sudden it opens up this kind of Pandora's box of like everything you should do, quote unquote, if we go back to this idea of like pantomiming a streamer, right? Everything you should do in terms of like following the unwritten rules of what you need to do in order to like be a good streamer, and then also logistically what you have to do in order to make it actually work so that when you press go live things function, you know. There's a lot that goes into it that I think you said it well. I don't think that you could possibly know until you actually try it.
Did you when I've like I've switched to OBS, but I was using Streamlabs for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and when I first started using Streamlabs, basically when I first started streaming, there was this moment when I opened it up and I was setting everything up, and like the new follow alert popped up because I was testing it out, and it was like that zombie running that's like the default follow
Yeah,
alert,
yeah.
and it was just like, huh. So that's just like no one's selecting that or anything. That's just in there, and there's just like this weird feeling of like, the man behind the curtain, like digging around in Wizard of Oz, realizing like just like it's not all as personal as I thought it was. Like a lot of this is just people not changing default settings and stuff. It was
Yep.
kind of weird.
Yep, totally. Like the noises for all of them too. Like I found that like
Yeah.
there was one for me. I still don't know why. My donation noise. I haven't figured out how to make it actually change. All of my other ones, it's fine. But that noise is forever the default noise because anytime I've tried to like upload like an MP3 or whatever, it just doesn't take it. I don't know why. And I've meant to change over my alerts and stuff to Stream Elements for like the longest time and just like haven't done it. And I think that like that goes back to kind of what we're saying. It's like there are some things that yeah, yes, you could and arguably should in terms of this idea of like, being a streamer or whatever, personalize, and at the same time like it's okay to decide that you're not going to put your energy towards that because there's so many other things that you could put your energy toward.
Yeah. It's always like, I mean, another part of the reason that there's just like a photo of me in the podcast and not like a PNG tuber or anything is like I do have this list of things that I want to do to personalize my stream, but it kind of goes back to like it's a lot of work to do these things, and you
Yeah.
can't delegate it. Like you can delegate some stuff to mods and stuff. Like when it comes to like, keep the Nazis out of my chat. Like okay, mods can do that, but
Right.
like mods can't like personalize your stream for you.
Right.
really. I mean, you can like commission art and stuff, but I mean, if you want to personalize it, there's all that work you have to do, and where do you find the energy to do it?
Right. Right. What kind of things do you prioritize in your stream that way?
Um, I mean, the main thing is just like, is the mic working? Like, can people hear me, and can they hear the game, and like, are the audio levels fine? If all of that's working, then like, because I've done other streams where like I was doing some reading streams for a little while as like an
Oh
experiment,
yeah.
and I might go back and do that because I liked that. But I changed things so that I had like it's kind of an annoying setup. I had like a looping video in QuickTime or something that I was screen capturing that, but then like had to have it off to the side, minimized, but then like it was this like really complicated, annoying thing. But that wasn't a priority going into that stream. I was like, okay, if this doesn't work, as long as the audio's working, like, because people are just, they don't really care about like seeing like soothing ocean waves looping. Like, they're just there for the voice mostly. Like, I guess, I guess that's something because I am kind of a perfectionist. It comes out in like anything creative I do, and Twitch is a weird combination of like work and creativity.
Yeah.
You have to be creative in your work, and it's just been learning like these things don't matter. Like, yeah, I could like customize this and personalize this, but like, do people really care if I personalize my like followers goal or something? Not really. I don't really care.
Yeah.
It's cool when people do it. Like, I think friend of the podcast, Weaselbeth, like
Oh, I love you, Beth.
has a fantastic like layout and everything. Like, it just
So
all
true.
looks so cool. So it definitely pays off if you do put the energy into like all that stuff. Like, another channel I mod for, and a friend of mine, Willow, has all of these alerts that she's created, like these custom alerts from like I think mostly Final Fantasy. Don't tell her, but I've never played any of those games. So I don't actually know what games they're
I
from.
don't think she would judge you. She seems like the type that would be totally okay with that. But yeah.
No, she knows that like I've never played Zelda or like any Metroid game.
Yeah.
So I'm really confused about what those games actually are because she plays a lot of
Mm.
like like randomizers where those games are combined into one
Ooh,
game.
that's intense. Yeah.
So for me, like Legend of Zelda and Metroid are like one franchise. Like, I don't understand the difference between the two because they're, but yeah, like her alerts are fantastic. So like you can like if you put the work into it, you get some really awesome results. You just have to, I guess, decide like, does it really matter to me, and is the result going to be worth it to me, and what
Yeah.
like aesthetic I'm trying to have. And for me, currently no, but I do have like some big plans and how I want to like kind of bring my illustrations into my stream and kind of create like
Yeah.
a layout for that. But again, where with what energy?
Right, totally. Well, and going back to the two people you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong about Willow, but I know that for Iwi, this is her full-time gig, and I'm assuming the same for Willow, is it not?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so like that also is something that is like really important to take into consideration. That like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of time and energy and wherewithal, and also like pressure to show up and do these things, it's gonna be much more feasible and necessary for a full-time streamer than it is for someone like you who has decided like this is not going to be my gig, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like
Oh, definitely.
I think that like there's something important to acknowledge about that, because for me anyway, it's so easy to like get down on myself for not prioritizing those things more, while failing to like recognize like that I have a 40-hour a week full-time job outside of streaming, you know? So it's and even with that, even if you do have, you know, all of these other things outside of streaming, like that still doesn't necessarily mean that you like, you know, don't want to put the energy and the time into it. Like certainly there are people that do. I just think that like that that capacity is limited for everyone, you know.
Yeah, and it is kind of a weird thing to put time and energy into because as the streamer, like, you don't really see it. Like, you put all this time and
Yeah.
energy into creating this space for the viewers,
Yeah.
but then you like you don't really get to enjoy it.
it's funny because like I do get into like doing like specific layouts for like event streams and stuff. Like I really enjoy changing up my layout. But it is one of those things where I like when I get existential about it, I'm like, does anyone actually care that I do that? Like, and because it does take a lot of time and a lot of energy, and I care, I enjoy it. But like you said, I'm not necessarily the one that is like consuming it at that level. I'm producing it, but you know, and I mean, you can get into that with anything with streaming, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, for the record, I think your layouts are pretty great.
Hey, thank you.
Big fan of the whole look of the
He
place.
thinks. He thinks. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, and this kind of goes back to something you were saying earlier. It's like how much of this is for you versus how much is for the people that you're creating content for, the people that show up, and like at the end of the day, like if a loop of ocean waves matters to you, then that's an important enough reason to do it, whether or not it matters to other people. But we in some on some level, because there is that like human interaction kind of transactional piece of things, I think we're always going to think of like how other people take it, right? Like we're not necessarily streaming into a complete and total void, even though we are. There is some sort of expectation that like there are going to be other people that interact with it on some level, you know?
Yeah. And uh like you said, it's different for me since this isn't how I live. I don't survive on Twitch, so it's I have the privilege of being able to decide like I don't need to make everything as good as possible, but there are a lot of people on Twitch, and if you're doing it for a living, like you have to try to make your storefront as appealing as possible to get
Yeah.
people to come in, and you don't really have a choice but to, even if you're not personalizing everything, even if it's like, this really doesn't matter to me, but it probably matters to other people. It's just
Yeah.
then then like the cost benefit
Mm-hmm.
analysis is a little different.
Yeah.
I'm able to be like, more. Uh, I'm able. I guess what I'm saying is like I'm able to take care of myself and prioritize myself more. And if you're doing it for a living, you really can't do that. Like you have to always be changing these things and trying to improve, trying to get a slice of the viewer pie to keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Well, and there has to, but also for it to be sustainable, I think especially if it's your full-time gig, you have to find balance in that, and you have to be able to take care of yourself within that, you know, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're gonna it's a recipe for burnout.
Oh yeah.
I remember this one time someone I was talking to. This was before this podcast, but it was when I was dreaming of doing this podcast. I was asking him some advice and just some of the things that he thought of, and one of the things he talked about was like your thumbnail has to be really good, which I had never even thought about that. This idea of like it's not just about what your layout looks like when people are in your stream. It's about what does it look like at this like tiny size to make people click on it. I was like, fuck, like there's so much that goes into like trying to like not even appease the masses, but to like gather the masses, you know? Like it's wild when you get down to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've changed my thumbnail in like
I
2 or 3 years.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never really I thought it was really great advice, and I don't even know if I really paid attention to it, but I do think it's an interesting thing to think about. What is your relationship to the numbers and the algorithm and the kind of strategy involved with streaming?
Um, I think I would. I think I probably wouldn't stream like the same games for years because I pretty much just stream like Slay the Spire and Stardew Valley.
And Hearthstone. I see you out there.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like the main games, definitely Stardew Valley and Slay the Spire. Lately,
Yeah.
Slay the Spire. Um, I try to not think about the numbers. I hated that Streamlabs like just had a viewer number like in the corner that you're seeing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, cool, thanks for showing me that. I love that OBS doesn't have that. But I don't. Yeah, I try not to think about it. But I try to be aware of events related to numbers, like if someone follows, if there's a raid, things like that. Like then I care about it. It's like, oh, because I want to like thank people. If someone
Yeah.
follows, like I want to appreciate that. But if I'm just streaming, like because it is, once you get sucked into numbers, like there's no bottom to that really. And again, if you're doing it for a living, you kind of have to get sucked into that and
Yeah.
then learn like how to like stop. Like you have to be able to stop yourself from getting sucked into that, but it's something you definitely have to be aware of, and it's just, but it can be a really depressing, frustrating thing, to like chase those numbers, and Twitch definitely doesn't help that by like suggesting things you could be doing better to improve like your position in like the discovery section and stuff like
Right.
that. And it's like, oh, well, if I didn't feel bad about what I was doing before, Twitch
You
has helped me
know,
feel bad.
man, it's so true. I remember when Twitch first came out with the little like it's if you look at your metrics after a stream, they'll show you games you like could have played, right? And like what the
Yeah.
ratio of like viewer to this game is or whatever. And it's like it's so funny. It's like, okay, so, the average viewers of your game is 3 viewers, but if you had played this game, the average is 400 viewers. It's like, okay, thank you Twitch, but also it doesn't work that way. Like it's yeah, it's interesting this platform that like so many of us have found so much joy in having a space to be creative and have human connection and to find refuge in the ability to be ourselves while also having this pressure of the machine constantly throwing numbers in your face, like constantly. Twitch is relentless that way.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I don't want to like, I'm, I don't want to just like shit on Twitch. But it's, I feel like Twitch is good despite Twitch. Like Twitch tries very hard to ruin Twitch, it seems
It
like a
sure
lot of the
does.
time. And then streamers find a way to keep Twitch going.
Yep.
And it's just, it's an interesting dynamic to see like,
Yeah. Because I love Twitch, and Twitch sucks.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think you said it well. I fully agree with that. Yeah, streamers do keep Twitch going, and in spite of itself, definitely. And that's not to say that Twitch hasn't like made some like good decisions recently, but also like a lot of the decisions that Twitch makes are a little too little, too late. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Anyway.
mean, it's nice that like hate raids aren't as big of a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like they've done some good stuff, but it's also like, is that really something that like couldn't have just been there from the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the amount of coding, which I don't really know the ins and outs of that, but like how long it took them to get shield mode. I'm so grateful that shield mode exists, but the amount of time it took for them to do that is wild.
Yeah.
For you in terms of like hate raids and trolls and whatnot, I'm so curious like what is your perspective on trolls as a mod, and then what is your perspective on trolls as the streamer?
Um, as a mod, it depends on the channel. Some people just want trolls gone. Some people want to give trolls a chance because, like, it happens very rarely, but sometimes, like, you can, like, win a troll over and they become a part of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people want to, like, also farm the trolls for content because trolls are good for that because they're, um, but, and it also depends on the community. Like, does the community feel comfortable having like a troll in that space?
Yeah.
So that's as a mod, as a streamer. I'm fortunate in that I don't get a lot of trolls. I have mods, but like I feel like the only times, occasionally there's a troll, but usually it's just like the like the viewbot spam stuff like that, and just delete those messages and um, which is one of the benefits of being a smaller streamer is you just security through obscurity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True. Yeah. What kind of, for you, is the line between maybe who you are in your private life versus who you are online?
Um, I think I don't think that I am different. I don't feel like I really am performing in the way that some people perform on Twitch, which isn't bad. Like it's fine. It's just I don't have the energy to perform, so I just can't do it.
Mm.
So I had to decide like, okay, am I gonna like am I going to stream as a chronically ill person who doesn't have the energy to like perform and is just going to be, sick sometimes on stream? And uh, I think for me, the line is just I is the end stream button. I have the ability to end it at any time I want, and there's some comfort in that, like knowing, like, okay, I have this boundary that like no one can cross because I can just end the stream and then
Yeah.
it's over and I can have my, time to myself. Um, so I think that's the line. It's less about like being different in some ways on stream and more about just like being able to end it and stop whenever I want, which again is because I don't do this for a living. If you do it for a living, you don't really have that. Like you can't just end stream whenever you want. You have
Yeah.
to, um, yeah. So yeah, just that button is, I guess, the line for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to end it, I think too, the power of being able to ban people, block people, like there
Hmm.
is something very like comforting about that, and knowing that like you have
Yeah.
that kind of control, I guess.
I guess for me, I don't know if this is accurate, but this is just kind of, we both have musical backgrounds, so maybe you can tell me if this is accurate or if this is total nonsense. But to
Mm.
me, it kind of feels like the difference between like performing in a studio, recording in a studio, and a live performance. Like you can't just you can cut the mic in a live performance, but it's not the same as like if you're in the studio and things aren't working. It's like, okay, I'll just come back another day and try to
Yeah.
get this take.
Yeah.
But live, like you can't do that. You have to find a way to make it work.
You know, it's funny. So I come from a jazz background specifically. And everything you said is right, but my relationship to studio recording is so different than a lot of musicians that I've met. I much prefer live performing, um, because of the ephemeral nature of it. I love that you can go out there and play a thing and then it's gone. There's something about that that is really beautiful and kind of like freeing because it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense. Something about like putting it down on a record, the permanence of that is very intimidating to me. Whether or not you can go back and record the next day or like tweak it in post or like whatever, like there's something about that that like is far more intimidating and anxiety like inducing than just performing. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
No, that makes sense. I think I feel a similar anxiety. I mean, mostly when I record music now, I'm just doing it on my own. But like, I've been in a studio before and recorded in a studio, and it's yeah, there's definitely an anxiety of like this is going to be like recorded. Like, there's
Yeah,
actually it's going to be physically put into a hard drive. Like,
right.
things are going to change in on the drive, and my sound's going to live there. But
Yeah.
I think as I've gotten older, I value it more as like a form of self-archive. Like I have old
Yeah.
recordings that like I go back and listen to, and it's like, I'm not sure how I
Cringe.
feel about this existing, but at the same
Totally.
time, it's like I am glad that it exists because it preserves
Yeah.
how I was feeling at that time, and like it's a way of like, you know, 20-year-old Sable existing in the
Yep.
future.
Yep. Yeah, it's like a weird little time capsule for sure. Well, and it's funny. I have such a better relationship with streaming that way for whatever reason. Like with streaming, I think because of my mindset going into streaming, like I never really thought of it becoming a thing. I just thought, oh, this will be kind of fun. You know, I'll have clips and it'll be funny to me, kind of a thing. I didn't really think of it as being like a thing for other people at that point. I thought of it almost as like digital like scrapbooking almost, you know? So it's funny because I think music, when I was doing the musician thing, I took so much more seriously, and not necessarily in a good way, but that was my like entire being and like purpose for existing was like being a musician, which is very like narcissistic and weird when I think about it. But you know, what 20-year-old kid isn't narcissistic and weird? But yeah,
Yeah.
like it's funny because it's like going back to the recording thing too. Another piece of it that doesn't necessarily relate to what we're talking about, but another piece of the anxiety for me was knowing that I'm on other people's time, and potentially this is costing a lot of money, which obviously if you're doing like a home recording, setup, that's not the same, but like if you're going into a studio, that costs money. So every
Oh
fuck up
yeah.
you make costs money, so like I doing more like studio musician stuff where like I got hired to like record on other people's stuff felt easy because I could just kind of one take wonder it, like go in, do what they wanted, leave. But like with my own stuff, I have a tendency to get a little bit too attached to my own brilliance, as it were. So there's this like bizarre like pressure to show up in a way that like would never really live up to my expectation in my head, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's as someone who's not just in music, but like in illustration and anything creative that I do, if I'm not careful, I will fall into that. Because if I'm
Yeah.
doing it for someone else, like you said, it's different. But if I'm doing it for myself, it's time is the cheapest and most valuable resource. Like you get it for
Yeah.
free, but you don't get any more of it. So like it's if I'm using someone else's time or I'm on someone else's time, like doing art for someone, for example, it's like, yeah, I'll just, like you said, one take wonder it, knock it out of the park. But then if it's for me, it's like, oh, I can spend all my time on this. I can do it over and over. I can try to make it perfect, and it never is. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, with recording, like on the last album I did, there's one song that just has a very obvious wrong note that I hit, and I just left it in there because I was like, that's fine. And I wonder what it'll be like going into the scrapbooking or the self archive. Like, I wonder how I'll think
Yeah.
about this wrong note in 5 years or whatever. Now when I listen to it, it's like, oh, it's that little
Totally.
note.
Totally. Like I listened to some of the greats in terms of like bebop era jazz, which is like when people talk about jazz, like bebop era, like Charlie Parker, like era jazz is like the pinnacle, right? Because it's the most technical, and it's never been my favorite. I love Charlie Parker, don't get me wrong, but like I've always been much more into like something like a little bit grittier with like soul. But even when you listen to like that era of jazz, like people make mistakes on records all the time, and play wrong notes, like wrong whatever that means, right? Like doesn't fit within the key structure or whatever,
I don't
and
even
that's
know
just
what that
part of
means
it.
with jazz. Like that shirt meme that I sent you a few
It's
days ago.
so good. I need
That's how I
that
think
shirt.
about jazz.
That it's perfect. Well, I mean, it's so God. Like I could soapbox on this forever because I have such a love hate relationship with jazz. More love than hate, but they're in terms of this kind of like self-righteousness with regard to like technicality in jazz and what like let's play the hippest scale at the fastest tempo, and if you can't do that you're no good, like that kind of vibe for me is never, it's just never been me. I've never registered with that, but I like, and I think part of why I like live performance too is like I'm much more interested in hearing how you recover when you fuck up or something goes wrong or something goes not even like wrong in a bad way but goes different from what's expected versus hearing this kind of perfect thing that you worked on and worked on and worked on and worked on, like, which is, it has merit too, don't get me wrong. There's something really beautiful about like someone that is so dedicated to their craft that they really want to like master it in this very technical way, but like I'm much more interested in the human element of it, I think, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does. And to bring that back to streaming, I think you see that a lot in like it depends on what game someone's playing, but like if it's a game where you can lose,
Yeah.
if you're losing on stream a lot, I mean, you play hardcore classic WoW, so like if things go wrong, like how do you respond to that on stream? How do you like
Yeah.
there is like this improvisational nature to that that's similar to jazz and like, oh, I thought
100%.
I had the potion here, I don't have the potion, my health's dropping, like how do I recover from this?
Oh my God, you just
And
reminded me that I had a hardcore dream the other night and I totally forgot about it till you just said. That's really funny. My potion wasn't on my bar in my dream, Sable, and I freaked out.
oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my God, my potion. And I remember like trying to open my bag in my dream and I was like, I can't find my potion. And I totally forgot I had that dream until you just said. That's really funny. I
I'm
probably play
glad I
too
could
much
remind
WoW.
you of a terrifying dream.
Are you really playing hardcore if you're not having dreams about it? Ridiculous. No, but the improvisational element of it, I compare video games to music often. Because there's this kind of like the muscle memory piece of it, I think, is so similar. The technical proficiency in terms of like doing the same thing over and over and over again, and getting better at it. There's something very satisfying about that. For me, whether it's music or when we talk about, video games, like it's a very similar kind of a thing. And
The
yeah, the
groupies are the
improvisational
same.
element. Say that again.
The groupies are the same.
The groupies are the exact
Yeah.
same.
We get those streamer groupies, you and I.
We sure do. That's funny. I love it though. I love being able to talk to other like creative people and being able to like get into this space of kind of recognizing that it's all the same, even though it's different. Because it really is. Like, I'm curious for you with illustrating. To me, that's a little bit different because you're not necessarily illustrating in real time in front of people. Some people do that on Twitch, which is wild and impressive to me. But like, what is your relationship to illustrating in terms of like creativity and doing it on a personal level versus doing it for other people?
Oh God, I feel like my therapist has asked me the same question.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. So my current relationship to illustration is that I haven't touched my sketchbook in like 2 or 3 months. But my actual relationship to illustration, when I am doing it, is it's the oldest artistic and self-expressive relationship that I have that I can remember having. Like I like 3 or 4 years old and filling up sketchbooks. Like I remember doing that. So going like with the self archive of music, like the songs that I record are autobiographical, not in like a folksy way, but just like I'm recording how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what the world is like to me. But with illustration, it feels much more, especially as I've found my like my voice. I don't know why I'm doing air quotes since I'm not on camera, but I did air quotes there.
Nice.
My like my voice with illustration, it's just it's gotten wordier. Sometimes it feels like I'm illustrating essays, and it's just and the perfectionism of illustration is through the roof. Like I'm much more forgiving when it comes to music than I am with illustration. I think it's because like
Interesting.
I can sense my limits more with music. Like I have problems with my ulnar nerves, so like I know that I'm always gonna struggle with like pinky mobility on my guitar, for example. So I'm more forgiving if I mess up that way. But like with illustration, I know that like I can do this. It's just out of reach. But like if I try harder, and yeah, it's a lot easier for me to get frustrated with illustration and to be self-critical and all that.
It's interesting. Do you feel that at all with streaming?
Um, Not really. I feel kind of bad giving that answer that like I don't feel self-critical with streaming, but
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think it's because I'm very comfortable and like when I say like I want to be a small streamer, a part of me is like, oh, well, you're just saying that because that's all you can be. So you've decided to like just accept that and make like that your goal because that's all you can achieve. But like I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't think that's accurate. I think if I actually put effort into it, could grow my stream, but I don't really want to do that. So I think
Yeah.
it's like because I'm comfortable having a small community, being a smaller streamer, there isn't really that feeling of self-criticism, and I think that's because like people do come to the stream because of just me. So like the the community provides a counterweight to any self-criticism I would have of my stream. Like if I feel like I'm not doing a good job, well, there are people in chat talking to me, having a good time. So like, if the purpose of what I'm doing is trying to create like a soothing environment where that people can feel safe and comfortable in, and people are feeling safe and comfortable, then like I'm not failing. It doesn't matter how much I try to like analyze it and dissect it and find things that I could be doing better. Like I can't. There's just this like it's like this. I can't negate the proof of like people are there. So yeah, like the community just provides that counterbalance.
Do you find that affirms you like in your real life as well?
Yeah, that's it's nice knowing that people who were like complete strangers, like as as strangers can be, like not even from like from the other side of the world, like people will find your stream and like something about you, and it's really hard not to feel like there's something likable about you when that happens. It's like, oh,
Mm.
I'm not I'm not a total piece of shit. There's like things that people like about me.
Yeah.
Aw shucks.
It is funny because I think people often, when I talk to them about streaming, will talk about streaming in terms of like, I don't know why people hang out with me, and I was like, on some level you must though, because you do go live, and people do hang out with you, you know what I mean, like, and I think you nailed it in terms of like being a soothing presence, and there's all sorts of other things I can name about you, but I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. But I do, I think that there's something really lovely, and I've had this kind of thing too of having this like feedback about who you are that like says that like people like that and want to be around that. Like there's something about that that feels really good, you know?
Yeah, it's weird how in when you start streaming on Twitch and you start building a community, at some point you realize that the community you've built is kind of a mirror, for
Mm-hmm.
better or for worse. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like you have an incredible community, so I think that's great for you. It says a lot of great things about you. And it's weird to me because I don't like saying nice things about myself, but I really like my community too. So the fact that
Yeah.
I've done that, it's like, huh, interesting.
And I do. I'm one of those that it might not be fair all the time. I really do judge a streamer by their chat. I do. Like it tells me a lot about who you are as a person, how your chat interacts with you. Now, granted, there are certain situations where there's a streamer I'm thinking of right off the top of my head who kind of blew up overnight. In such a way that's like when you go from, and even I say blew up, he's been fairly big for a long time, but like he went from maybe like a couple hundred people to now like several thousand people in his chat consistently. So when that happens, you can't control that many people in that short of a span of time, right? But like on some level, like the culture that you foster does tell me a lot about, yeah, who you are as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially with doing mod work, I think I have a better sense. Like if I'm in a chat, like I can kind of sense, is the streamer in control of the chat or not? Like is the chat
Mm-hmm.
something that's happening to them, or are they cultivating it, like you said? And
Yeah.
I'm a lot more forgiving. Like if it's, I can tell if it's just like they don't know how to like guide chat into being the community that they want it to be or
Totally.
something. But yeah, you if it's, I'm the same as you. If it's just like a really toxic place and you can tell that like the streamer's fine with that, then it's
Yeah.
why do I want to be there? I don't.
Totally. Totally. Well, and this is just a personal thing. This is nothing wrong with people that do this, but like I don't have a big tolerance for the let's play with the trolls because it's content thing. Sometimes people do it really well in such a way that like is not only entertaining but also kind of like creates a boundary in a way that like is very clear, right? But there's some people that it's like, man, you're just letting all this toxicity take up all of the space in this in
Yeah,
your content. You know what I mean? Like so all of a sudden there's not space for all of the really great people that are here. Now all of the intention and focus is on this like terrible person, you know? I'm
yeah.
not a fan of that on a personal level.
I think Willa does a great job of that because she has an emote that the chat can use that's like a safe word. Like if playing with the troll for content is too much, if chat uses that emote, then it's like okay, troll's gone because
I
the
love that.
community always gets priority over that.
I
She
love
also
that.
has her mod team, including me, and like one, it's like the second a troll shows up, like boom, all of us are like on the troll. But there's that trust that you have between the streamer and the mod team where like she trusts us to know that like if that like we're ready if she wants us to yeet the troll into the sun, but
Mm,
we trust her to be able to like, because she'll use the trolls like to like for educational purposes basically, like she does her
yeah.
trans 101 streams and the trolls are usually being transphobic and she uses that to say like this is what you're saying, here's how it actually is, but like in a really funny way.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a big part of that is just that relationship between like your mod team, if you have one, and the streamer, and just that trust that like, and the community, like you have that trust, like everybody kind of knows what's going on, and um, there's not that sense of it just being like a chaotic situation. Like it's a
Right.
very controlled thing.
There's like a mutual understanding of kind of what flies and what doesn't, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What has been your experience in terms of like having been chosen to be people's mods or asking people to be their mods?
It's very flattering. I mean, when you asked me, I was like, oh gosh, I'm
Oh,
blushing.
jeez.
Um, and it wasn't my first experience moderating online. Like I've been doing mod work online, not on Twitch, but like in general for a long time. And it's very flattering when someone asks you. I have to, in the beginning years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I can't turn down this. This is great. Like, but now that I know how much work is goes into it, and like sometimes it can be emotionally draining, especially if you're modding a lot of channels, because like you
Sure.
generally are seeing a lot of people at their worst. Like you see a lot of messages that chat never sees because Twitch will just flag them.
Yep. Yep.
So it's just knowing like knowing your limits and knowing what you can do. But yeah, mostly it's just really flattering. Like this person trusts me to do this, and I'm not gonna let them down.
Yeah. What is it that you, especially having modded for lots of different spaces on online, what is it that you enjoy about modding?
I wouldn't say that I enjoy it. Like I don't hate it. If I hated it, like I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It just feels like I feel like the internet runs on like unpaid moderators trying to keep things like fascism out of like from just like filling up every space. So it's not that I enjoy it. I just feel like it's necessary. Like you need moderators because like you know the billionaires don't give a shit about it. Like they're fine with like just letting every site turn into like Twitter or
Yeah.
X now, I guess. So yeah, it's not that I enjoy it. I feel like it's necessary, and I feel like I'm able to do it. Not everyone can, because it
Yeah.
some people like it's just it can be draining because just you kind of have to get used to it. Um, you shouldn't like you should like you. I think we talked about this once before when you had a troll in the chat. Like you shouldn't have to get used to it. Like you should be able to have those like normal human reactions of like this person said something horrible and I'm
Yeah.
angry, but like you kind of have to be able to shut those down as a mod or at least distance yourself from that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm glad not everyone can do it. I think the internet would be a very sad place if everyone was able to be a mod because it just would be a less emotional place.
Yeah. Yeah. When I remember that, yeah, I really appreciate this idea of like what you're having is a normal human reaction. Like that has stuck with me so much because it's like there is this kind of idea of like the like don't let them get to you, like
Yeah.
that attitude that to me like is like great in theory, not how it works all the time. So it's like it's okay that they get to you because that's their entire intention, and at the same time like you just can't let that define your like self-worth or your the ability to like put yourself out there, I guess, or necessity to put yourself out there, you know. But yeah, being a mod, thank you for being a mod. We do need the mod. Mods are what make the world go around, and I don't think that Twitch would be the safe place that it is for many of us were it not for mods. So I very much appreciate people like you that whether or not it's something you enjoy, it's something that you have decided to take on. Is very cool.
I'm glad that I'm able to do it for you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Well, jeez. You've mentioned Willow a couple times, and we talked about Iwi as well. What kind of streams inspire you? What kind of content inspires you?
Like aside from them, I think just in general, like those streamers who are able to have like that, I kind of like the way I described it as like authenticity without specificity. So I'll use that again. But like the people
Mm-hmm.
who are able to maintain that, who do like try to cultivate a safe environment where people can just have fun. Like there aren't that many places you can just have fun online anymore. Like, it, which sounds strange, and I don't know if that's just like me being old and stuff and like forgetting what fun is, but um, yeah, just I guess that's what whether it's a small streamer or a large streamer, just like those are the things that I'm drawn to. And yeah, I find that really, I really admire that in streamers who can do that. It's not easy, and it's really great to see that. So those are the streams I want to be in as a viewer. Those are the streams I try to emulate as a streamer.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was just gonna kind of say, and it goes along the same lines. Are there any like takeaways or first impressions that you hope people have from your stream?
I think just like the way that I am on stream, and like the environment that I try to have, like the way that I've been speaking in this stream, it's just like how I am in stream. The streams are just always like that. Like it's never there's not I'm not trying to create a safe space or a soothing place because I like think I can commodify it in some way. I'm trying to
Mm,
do that because I genuinely think it's necessary and good. And I'm also trying to do it for myself because I want that space when I'm streaming. I need that space when I'm streaming. So I guess I that would be my takeaways. I just would want people to like, and that's not something I can insist on, like believe that this is like an actual like safe, comfortable, cozy place. But I would want people to like over time realize like, oh, this streamer really is just how they seem to be. It's not, they're not like pre- pretending to create like this space, but like it's not actually a safe space.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, in this idea, I always think it's funny when people use the tag safe space. Funny, aka it really annoys me. Because you don't get to define what is safe for other people, right? You can define what's safe for you, and other people may feel that as well. And you can prioritize the safety of others by listening to their needs and honoring their needs, right? But like, it's always funny to me when people are like, "This is a safe space." It's like, for whom? Like, what do you mean it's a safe space? So like,
Yeah.
I like this idea of like I'm gonna be intentional about creating a space that like I need, and hopefully it's a space that others need, and I can be responsive to the needs of others when they align with what I believe in and who I am. You know?
Yeah, it's not just like a safe space for me to tell my jokes and stuff.
Right.
Like um I want it to be like descriptively a safe space because I don't think you can prescriptively be a safe space.
Right. Fully agree. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Twitch chat. First of all, thanks for the follows for folks who have followed. I appreciate you. It's good to see you. And anyone else who's hanging out, we're gonna get to some of your questions now. So if you have any questions for Sable, type them into chat, and we will get to those in just a minute here. We've talked about music and we've talked about illustrating. Do you have any other like hobbies or passions outside of streaming?
Um, well, I live with two cats, which is not a hobby. I
Love
guess
it.
it's a passion, but it's
It's a lifestyle.
yeah. Um, I mean, Twitch is a big part of my life. I when like it's not a coincidence that like I really started getting into Twitch and like I started watching and stuff in like 2015, 2016, but like really started watching a lot more in like 2017 and on, which is also when my chronic illness really started. Like it's just
Mm.
so Twitch is a big part of my life. I'm watching it and stuff, but like I'm passionate about it. I'm full of passion, so many passions. I just how do I even pick one passion?
You can
Uh, my
pick several.
my current passion is I'm trying to befriend the neighborhood crows,
Okay.
and yeah, currently I've befriended a lot of raccoons and squirrels, which is fine. The crows are a little more ambivalent, but I'm working on them.
They would be. That makes sense. Okay, wait, this brings me to a question. So your handle on other social media is Pigeon Radio, and I wanted
hmm
to know, where does that come from?
Um, so a long time ago, I don't think it's the same. But if you on iTunes, if you wanted to create a radio station, like you could right click on a song and generate a radio station from the song, and it would be song title radio. So, and I did that a lot to find more songs like songs that I liked. And one time I was listening to the song Pigeon by Cannibal Ox, which is a really good song. And it generated the radio station Pigeon Radio, and there was just something about that, like the idea of like humorously like pigeons listening to a radio, but also like a radio of like pigeon languages, and then it got me thinking about like languages like a lossy uh, medium of communication and stuff, and I just kind of tucked it away, and then like a year or so later, I had this experimental music piece that I was releasing, and I didn't want to release it under my name, and I was like, oh yeah, Pigeon Radio,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just sort of like, I guess that's the separation is like if I'm doing something under Pigeon Radio, usually it's like that's like the artistic name that I work with. Like Sable is just me, but like Pigeon Radio is like if I'm like, that's more focused on like illustration, music, stuff like that.
Gotcha. So more like intentional rather than incidental.
Yeah, I mean, I still end up shit posting and stuff under Pigeon Radio because I can't help it, but like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Of
try to be
course.
more intentional.
Got
Also, I'm
it.
sorry, I forgot if I could use profanity in
Oh my
your.
god, of course. You've watched my stream.
I know, but I couldn't
Please.
remember.
Like, keep it clean, Sable, please. No, you're totally fine. You're good.
Oh,
I'm
oh
pretty sure
heck,
I've
oh
all.
frig.
Oh, jeez. Pretty sure I've already said fuck a few times. We're good. Do you have a day job outside of streaming?
Not currently. I
Okay.
used to. I've had an interesting career path. Uh, but not currently, not since the pandemic. I'm fortunate that I don't currently need one either, so it's like as long as the cats stay fed, I'm fine.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's
And
good.
me. I mean, I need to eat too, I
Right,
guess.
sure. Cats first, obviously. But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Let's see. Fenaria says, slightly tangential, but how is your fishing only Stardew Valley run going?
Um, it's going well. Uh, so it for anyone who doesn't know, my fishing only Stardew Valley run is a farm in Stardew Valley where the only tool that I use is a fishing rod. I don't. There's nothing, no other tools in my inventory, which makes the game a lot more complicated because it's based around using all your other tools. Like you can't farm with a fishing rod, so it just kind of started out as like a puzzle for me. Like how far in the game can I get with only a fishing rod? And as I started getting further and further, I started like changing the goal. Like, can I start completing the community center with only the fishing rod? Can I complete the community center by year 3 with only the fishing rod? And that's currently the goal. I've completed like half of the community center. I think the hard for anyone who plays Stardew,
That's
I think
impressive.
the hardest thing for me to complete is going to be the quality crops. But you can farm with bombs. You till the soil with bombs, and then plant the seeds. So I have some fertilized crops growing. I haven't streamed it in a while, but because it turns out I can actually get burned out on fishing. It just takes like a year of a fishing only farm in Stardew Valley, but then it does actually happen.
That's a much higher tolerance, I think, than most people, honestly.
Um, but yeah, the hardest thing in the fishing farm, I learned way more about Stardew Valley playing that like most people would ever want to know.
Yeah.
The hardest thing in the game to find was actually quartz because for almost everything else in the game, there are multiple ways to get it, but quartz you can only get from a trash can or from picking it up in the mines. And
Interesting.
I couldn't get it in the mines. I did get one from a trash can, but
Nice.
donated it to the museum before I knew that that was the only way you could get it. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna bend my rules this one time, allow myself to grab one quartz from the mine and then start duplicating it so I can buy bombs, blah 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 blah. But yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's been a fun puzzle to try to solve. Every time I think that I'm stuck, I end up figuring out a way to keep moving forward in it.
That's cool. So wait, there's only one quartz in the game that you can possibly get? Is that what you're saying?
No, you
Or
can get like quartz is if you're playing normally, quartz is one of the most common things you can get in the game. But
oh,
the
but if
only
you're
way that
not
you can,
mining.
yeah, if you're not mining, then the only way you can get it is randomly from a trash can. It's like a less than 1% chance, I think.
I see. And you can't make bombs without quartz. So
Oh, I
you
can't make bombs at all because I don't have any skills except fishing, but I can go to the vendor in the desert and trade the quartz for bombs.
aha, okay. This is very
It gets
complicated.
really complicated. Like it's like this weird like Rube Goldberg machine of like
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to like turn this item into this item that I need.
It's really fun. It's cool because it's like it is such an expansive game and it's such a like well loved game, but I've never come across someone doing such a like interesting twist on it. It's very cool. It's a cool idea. And it's cool that you're enjoying it too.
Yeah, it's given me a lot of appreciation for how well designed the game is because
Yeah.
there's just so much redundancy built into the game to prevent you from getting stuck at any point. Like it was really hard for me to actually get stuck and it ended up being the quartz that I got stuck at. And even then I wasn't stuck. I could have kept searching trash cans forever, but that would have
True.
been boring.
Yeah, yeah. There's a limit, I'm sure. Let's see. Ti double go doesn't have a question, but says this was a nice chat. Thanks, Ti double go.
Aw, that's
Um,
Tigger, one of my mods.
yeah.
The
See,
the mod.
it took me a minute. It's so funny because Tigger has hung out in my chat several times, and I now know what the Ti2GUHR is. It took me too long though. Spirit Mender says this is a great interview. Sable's voice is so calming. What part of the country are they from? Assuming USA. They have raccoons and crows around.
So I am from the Midwest. I have tried to not have the regional accent that a lot of people have in this area. I've tried to have a more neutral dialect. So it's actually really weird for me to take a dialect map quiz. I am
Mm,
most similar to Aurora, Colorado, and then some town I've never been to in California because I've never been to California. But
interesting.
yeah, I'm actually from Missouri, but it's I try not to so I can't even do like an imitation of it. Like I've like purged so much of like the uh Missouri dialects from my not that there's anything wrong with them. I didn't want them. I just wanted like a neutral sounding voice.
Yeah, interesting. Um, what are some of the things that have surprised you the most since you started streaming?
One that I'm still doing it because
Mm,
there was a period like a couple years ago where I just was like it was around that time where I was realizing like oh this is a lot more work. This is I don't want to be a big streamer so like what am I going to be like am I going to be doing a lot of work to be a small streamer? Is there a way that I can make it less work? And I wasn't sure that I would still do it. And yeah, there was like a year where I just didn't really stream. So uh, I I think it was one the surprise that I like came like kept streaming. Two that people stuck around like went live after a year and like people were still hanging out and like sometimes people I haven't seen in years will pop into chat and it's like oh wow and that's always a surprise like that it feels really good when that happens like
yeah,
yeah there's something about me that people want to come back to.
totally. Yeah, yeah. Having regulars in your chat is something that to me is like such a like beautiful honor. It's like oh you like hanging out here consistently, like,
Y-
like you
yeah.
said you keep coming back. It's very cool. Yeah, there's something very lovely about that for sure. What are some things that you do to get ready for stream? What are some things that you do to wind down from stream? What are your like pre-stream, post-stream rituals?
um well since I don't stream with a cam I don't really I'm usually in like a bathrobe or something. I don't have that many pre-stream rituals. It's just like making sure the cam's off because I'm probably just like sitting there in a bathrobe and like I don't want to get banned.
Mm-hmm.
I usually like yeah. If the cats are awake, I'll give them treats so that they're not begging for treats like the entire time that I'm streaming. I mean, as far as like winding down from streaming, I don't usually feel like I need to wind down because it often just feels like a conversation like this, except I'm doing all the talking. But like sometimes I'll just go from streaming to like watching someone on Twitch and being like a viewer, and it just and I guess that's a good thing. Maybe it means I'm doing something right that I don't feel totally exhausted after a stream. That I've
Mm.
found a way to do it that feels sustainable to me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Do you have any advice for your younger streamer self?
Well, not that much younger. I haven't been streaming that long.
For your 2020 self?
Oh God. If I'm going back to give 2020 self advice,
See, that is your younger streamer self, and it feels like a lifetime ago, and yet.
yeah. Buy a lot of toilet paper because it's gonna go fast. No. I think I think this is I don't know if I guess this is advice, but this is kind of weird advice. Like there was this period in 2020 when it seemed like everyone was on Twitch and like because everyone was forced to be online. And as someone with like chronic illness and anxiety and a lot of things that kind of forced me to live online most of the time, I actually felt more connected to like humanity
Mm,
during that period of quarantine when everyone was kind of forced to live the way that I live.
yeah.
So I guess my advice is less about streaming and more about that time period when like everyone was on Twitch, like Among Us streams were getting 10,000 views. Congress people were streaming Among Us, and like it was just a weird time. But
Yeah.
my advice would be to I don't want to say enjoy that time because that time only existed because of something terrible. But just appreciate like that period of being able to feel normal, I guess, because it
Mm,
would eventually things would go back to quote unquote normal,
right.
which I have a lot of thoughts about. But yeah, it just like enjoy that period of like community because like all community online, it is temporary
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to jump into that idea of normal?
I mean, as a chronically ill person who has a lot, who's friends with a lot of chronically ill people, disabled creators and stuff, it's just like the world kind of ended for a lot of them. I would say us, but like I'm fortunate in that I am able to still move in the world in a more limited way. But it's just like the normal was never normal. Just excluded those people, and it just like it felt like in 2020 there was this moment where it seemed like people were kind of starting to get it. Like, oh, like
Yeah.
no one's coming to save us. We'll have to like care for each other and
Yeah.
like save each other mutually and all that stuff. And it's just been really frustrating over the last like 2 years to see like even ostensibly leftist groups and individuals just because like disabled people and sick people are like always the first people to get left behind. And it's also been difficult for me because I can move with like more able people if I try to. If I really push myself and like don't worry about the damage that I'm doing to myself, I can move in those spaces and keep up. But it's like I don't belong in those spaces, and I'm very aware of like the people being left behind because if I don't keep up, I'm going to be one of those people left
Yeah.
behind. And it's just been really, yeah, it's been really, it's still surreal. Like I think it's always going to feel surreal. And it feels strange to even talk about it because like no one talks about the pandemic anymore, but it's still like I have friends who still can't really go anywhere because of it, and it's
Right.
just like I don't know, like I feel like I'm killing the vibes when I talk about it. I don't really talk about it on stream anymore. That's one decision I made that I feel guilty about, but it's just like
Hmm.
there's nothing left for me to say about it. Like it's kind
Yeah.
of everyone, well, not everyone, but the people who have power decided that we were going to go back to normal, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
And yeah, like if some of my friends who are chronically ill or sick or disabled are in chat, like we'll talk about it, but it's not something I bring up anymore because it's just I don't know how to process that or grieve
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Totally. I often find myself frustrated with the fact that like whether we're talking about like disability justice or mutual aid or Black Lives Matter and all of these different things that like seemingly overnight we all came together and figured out that these are things that we can do something about, right? And then just as quickly forgot. It's as if we learned like nothing from that time. That like is it's just disheartening, for lack of a better word, honestly. And I feel for you.
Yeah.
Like I feel for chronically ill people and this kind of. continual messaging that we receive that is like essentially that you don't matter, right? Like it's is the thing that we get, and I am so appreciative of a space like Twitch where I'm able to connect with chronically ill people and hopefully still be able to support them in a way that like helps remind them that they do, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I value about not Twitch as like a company, but Twitch as a platform, as streaming as like a
Yeah.
as a modality is just it feels more like a sustainable normalcy. Like
Yeah.
it can be normal just to hang out with people and chat on and have a good time, but yeah, like yeah, it's been weird. Have you seen the movie The Road?
No, I haven't.
Uh, well, it's not really a spoiler, but there's this scene where there's like an apocalypse of some sort happening outside, and like there's this couple and their child who are like just surviving in the house and not going outside, and but eventually, like after months of that, the woman just sort of gives up and goes outside just to whatever happens, and I didn't understand that, but after the pandemic, like being chronically ill, it sort of felt like that was the choice that you had to make was like, do I just open the door and go outside into like the glowing night and just whatever happens?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm obviously I still think about that a lot, but I'm glad that I'm able to at least in some small way, hopefully create a space where there can be like a sense of like healthy normalcy and sustainable normalcy for like chronically ill or sick people
Yeah.
and anyone else who needs to rest their wings.
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned too, I don't remember what your exact wording was, but this kind of feeling of like guilt perhaps for not like talking about it more and bringing it up more, and just to like go on that like as the marginalized party, it's not your job. This doesn't all fall on you to like keep people aware of it, right? But I do think that like that's what sucks is that like it shouldn't, and yet it does. I guess like it kind of goes back to what we were saying about trolls, where it's like you shouldn't have to get used to these things, and yet this is
Yeah.
the reality that we're in. You know?
Yeah. And I did talk about it for a while, but I think it's just eventually it really did sink in that like I don't want to make it seem like, things are pointless or blah blah blah, but
Yeah.
it didn't matter if I talked about it. Like to commiserate
Yeah.
with people, that mattered. Like talking with people about it if they wanted to talk about it, that was different. But like me trying to like soapbox about it, like
Yeah.
as awful as it is to admit, like it like I lost, chronically ill people lost,
Mm-hmm.
and just have to figure out how to move forward with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fucking shitty.
At least we're ending on a happy note.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. Twitch chat, thank you for your questions and for being here. I really appreciate it. Sable, do you have any goals or projects coming up?
Um, the only goal really is just like I do have like I ideas for like bringing illustration into the stream, not as something I
Yeah.
do like on stream, but like bringing my illustrations into it and like layouts and maybe even like creating my own PNG tuber with and stuff
Cool.
like that. So
Oh my God, I
I
would
don't know
love that.
when or if that'll happen, but like I know I have the skills to do it. It's just it always comes down to like energy.
Totally. Totally. Well, we'll be around when if and when that does happen. So I think that would be really cool. But obviously, take care of yourself first and foremost. Well, with that, we're going to end with a little the final 10 question questionnaire inspired by James Lipston, Bernard Pivot, and CJ the X. Sable, are you ready?
Sure.
It's just like quick off the cuff, whatever the first thing comes to mind. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Which game or activity do you love to stream the most?
Slay the Spire.
Which game or activity do you hate to stream the most?
I don't stream anything I hate.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Trees.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Capitalism.
Which streamer would you like to meet most in real life?
Abbers,
Come
obviously.
on! I gotta change that question, man. Too many people are too cute. What's something you'd like to try on stream but never have?
Cosplay.
What is something you would never want to do on stream?
Be naked.
Why do you go live?
To connect with people.
Follow-up question. Why do you really go live?
To create a space for myself.
All right, final question. You're on your deathbed. You know exactly how much time you have. You have any and all resources available to you. Viewer count doesn't matter. Commercial viability doesn't matter. None of that matters. What do you do for your final stream on Earth?
Uh, I would probably do Stardew, you know. I would want to be comfortable on my deathbed, and I imagine like that'd be relaxing.
Perfect.
And then someone can inherit my farm. I'll be like the grandpa in Stardew.
That's cute. I like that. Oh, Sable, this was so lovely. I feel very honored that I got to chat with you and like not to make you uncomfortable. You're just such a insightful, wonderful human being, and I feel very lucky to have met you in this space. So thank you. Thank you for being you, and thank you for doing this and sharing your time and sharing your perspective with us. I really appreciate it.
I'm very flattered to be here. I am a big fan of the podcast
Oh,
and
geez.
you and your stream in general. So I feel like a real streamer being on your
You
podcast.
are a real streamer. I think that's my whole point with it is like I think that it's funny because we get into this like conversation about like big streamer, small streamer, whatever. But truly, like at the end of the day, to me, like if you've taken the time and energy to download OBS, figure out how that works, and then like go live, like you're a streamer, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah, you're a real streamer.
I'm a real boy.
You are. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little pressure on you. Is there someone online right now that you would like us to pass the love off to? And by the
Let me
way,
take a peek.
Twitch chat, if you're not following Sable on all the things, you're doing it wrong. Go follow Sable. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Wonderful, amazing human being. Go follow on Twitch. We've got the Twitter and the Instagrams as well. If you want to see some of these awesome illustrations, go do it.
I almost just reflexively was like, "Oh, hey, Abbers is online.
Hey,
let's raid
let's
Abbers."
raid me. I will be streaming later probably.
But no, Sloopaton's online.
Oh,
I I
perfect.
raid I raid them sometimes. So yeah, that'd be great.
We
I
can do
raided them the other
Salute
day.
Baton. Beautiful. If you don't know Salute Baton was recently on the podcast actually. So we're gonna get to know Salute Baton. Here's a little raid message that you can copy paste once I type it. We want to let Salute know that Sable sent us. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do the things, and I'm gonna do the stuff, and here it is. So Twitch chat, we're gonna go say hi to Salute Baton. If you don't know her, absolutely fabulous. I believe she's doing cosplay streams all this week, so we get to see a cool costume. And if you enjoyed this, and if you are a streamer or you know a streamer who you think would be a good guest on Why We Go Live, you can send an email to whywegolive@gmail.com. You can follow Why We Go Live on Twitter and Instagram and all that jazz. And I try to do this every 2 weeks, so we'll be back Sunday a couple weeks from now to interview somebody else. I have to actually raid her, huh? I have to actually do the thing, don't I? There we
You
go.
have to press the go
I have to
button.
actually press the thing. Spirit Mender and Sliced Raven and Wondergun and Fenaria and Cochesi and Feck This Site and Tigger. It's good to see all of you. If I missed someone, thank you for being here. Sable, always a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
And
for
with
being
that,
here.
we're raiding. It's happening. I'm pressing the button. The button has been pressed. And
go.
we're wait, let me do the thing and the stuff. And then